have Scott Trepanier. Scott, did I say your last name right?
Yeah, close. Trepanier.
Trepanier?
Trepanier.
Trepanier?
The French ending there. Trepanier.
It's French. Okay, yes. All right. I knew I was going to struggle with it. Scott is from Columbia Sportswear. He's the senior manager of PR and promotions. Scott, thanks for being here.
So I oversee PR, promotions, and social media at Columbia Sportswear. And I think everybody here is familiar with social media. Most people are familiar with PR. That's media relations. Promotions for us means events and athlete sponsorships. Tell you a little about Columbia. Columbia is part of Columbia Sportswear Company. A lot of people think Columbia and Columbia Sportswear Company are the same thing. Columbia Sportswear Company is actually the holding brand, which oversees Sorel, Columbia, Mountain Hardware, and Montreal. So each of those.
Give a slide of that, Scott.
Yeah. So each of those brands kind of have their own unique identity. Columbia is definitely the flagship brand. Columbia has a really interesting story. I mean, definitely it's part of the community here in Portland. The Boyles are deeply connected. But it's also been a company that's really been about innovation, product innovation. Some of the first fishing vests came from Columbia. The first jackets that were, 3-in-1 combination jackets came from Columbia. And that's something the brand has really been rededicated itself to in the last few years, is establishing itself as a technology and an ideas company, trying to separate itself from the competition by building technologies, building innovations, and not only that, but communicating in innovative ways. And that's kind of where we're taking the leap. We are a little late to the game from a social media perspective, but in the past year, we've kind of doubled down our efforts and learned a lot of new lessons. And I think coming from a perspective of we're a little behind in the marketplace, we can kind of see what our competitors are doing and learn from their successes and mistakes. That gives us a good advantage, I think. I think an interesting trend is really at a macro level, looking how, several years back, social media was really an add-on. You develop your campaign, your brand positioning, and then we're like, how are we going to execute this from a social level? Definitely seen a transition into more of an integrated approach where social is just key to brand positioning, campaign positioning. And I think some really smart brands are moving into a new frame where they're ceding control and really letting the community take more responsibility over setting brand direction, setting product direction. And I think that's kind of the macro trend I'm most interested in. I think there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it at a macro level, and when you're trying to sell in the case for social media at the company, that's when it's really challenging, I think, because you have to, at campaign level, you can be very specific with your measurements and ROIs. I can go and, for instance, if we're trying to drive traffic to ROI, that's very easy to prove out. When you're looking at a long-term investment, I think that's far more difficult to be specific because there's so many things you can measure. I think we look at the brand value we can add to different business groups. I think we can look at customer service and see, how many calls do we eliminate from the call center. I think we can look at what kind of business intelligence are we providing to our product teams around what products are resonating, which products are not. Those things aren't easily measurable. But we know they're good things for the business. So I think once you get down to the campaign level, it becomes a lot more easy to say, well, this has been shared this many times, this many shares is driving this many purchases. And another thing we look at is, honestly, we're in the wholesale business. So a lot of what we are in the business of doing is convincing our customers who buy our products and sell them at retail that we are effectively marketing on their behalf. And they're asking us to do social media. So I think we have to show examples of how we're engaging with our customers and communities through these mediums to even make those sales, to sell into our wholesale customers. That's the price of admission these days.
Scott, what tools are you using to track all those conversations? Multiple countries, multiple brands?
Well, that's a challenge. I mean, we're a global company. Most of our business is now overseas, there's lots of tools out there that I think this is a good discussion about how effective they are. There's a lot of promises thrown about around sentiment analysis, where people think they can look at tweets and use an algorithm to determine if they're positive or negative. I don't think they work pretty well. I think the best measurement is really a good community manager who is engaging, talking to your customers on a regular day basis, getting there knee deep and really get a sense for what's going on. It's not a perfect science. I think there's some folks trying to get there. I think when you get more into kind of the e-commerce space, that's something that is very measurable, but at a larger level.
What tools are you guys using right now at Columbia Sport?
We use CoTweet, we use Buddy Media. I think there's a lot of analytical tools built into those that give us some baseline data. And then when we are looking at specific campaigns, I think there's a lot of tools that are better at measuring video views, at conversion rates, and I think it really depends on the campaign what type of analytical tools we use. Each season we have pinnacle products and pinnacle technologies where we align all of our marketing messages around. And there's lots of ways to measure these, but increasingly we can look at our ratings on our e-commerce site as a way to see whether that's resonating with our fan base. So we can actually go and see, are these products that we're pushing, are those receiving the most likes? Are those being shared the most? Or are products which we've had in the marketplace for 10 years that don't represent the best we do, are those still receiving kind of the most likes? So it kind of is a barometer for the effectiveness of our marketing and the mindset of how our customers see our brands. Another way is really looking and kind of using it as a product marketing tool to understand the weaknesses of your competitors and kind of looking at the landscape and understanding, okay, this is where we should guide our direction. And some smart organizations use these ratings to actually guide their product direction, but I think that's a role social media marketers can play, is to gather this data, put it in a usable format where that guides our product development process. We can see, hey, there's a gap here where we consistently see people complaining about X product. Maybe that's a space we can enter. So I think it's a lot of opportunity there.